Okay, this is a short video on ripening tomatoes off the vine. So ripening them in the house, for example.
Well, how much of it do you have to have? Like a little bit or a lot?
Well, that's a good question. When it's figuring out when it's time to pick the tomatoes is the big question. That's a great question. Traditionally, I used to wait till tomatoes got pretty ripe looking. You know, they'd be about like this before I would pick them. And I thought maybe that was the best. However, I talked to an organic farmer who told me that as long as, you know, it has a little bit of color, even just a little bit like that one, or even this one has a little bit of color there, that as long as it has a little bit of color, he says it's fine to pick it off the plant and to let it ripen in the house or someplace or in a windowsill or somewhere. It does not need direct sunlight to ripen.
How long does it take to ripen like that?
Well, it's a good question. It depends on how ripe it already was when you picked it. For these, all of these, I picked these when they were about, when they looked about like maybe this or this, that they were mostly all green tomatoes with a little hint of orange or reddish, you know, just down by the tip. These happen to be heirloom tomatoes, so they have this pointy tip on the bottom. And these I picked about almost 4 days ago, and you can see they're pretty well, this one certainly is pretty well ripe now.
That one on the bottom got flat from the fence.
Yeah, it's flat on one side because I grew it up against a fence, that's right. So that's about how long. All right, and the other question that my assistant here was asking earlier was, why do we pick them off and let them ripen off the vine? And I guess the best reasons that I've heard of are that, number one, if you let them ripen on the vine, maybe you don't get around to them in time, and
and I just thought of another one.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, so that the bugs don't find it yet, and then they ripen inside where there was no bugs.
Excellent. That is a great reason, which is if you bring them in like this, while they're still pretty well green, the bugs usually have not attacked them yet. And then you bring them in the house where you've got no bugs around, and then your tomatoes can ripen up off the vine without the bugs. Also, they don't get overripe. Also, sometimes when they ripen on the vine, they get so ripe, and they may actually, if you don't get back to them in time, they may drop off the vine and crack on the ground.
That's what happened to our watermelon.
Yeah. Or if you have a lot of water, like if you get a lot of rain or if you put a lot of water on your plants, apparently what I've heard at least is that the skin stops growing once you get a little bit of orange or red on the plant.
Does the blight love the water?
So that once you have a lot of water that would increase the size of the tomato, then the tomato plant will actually crack, and you can see a little crack in this one. But if I had left that on the vine longer, I probably would have gotten a big crack, and then the bugs get in.
And, well, and also it's like sometimes it'll make more tomatoes faster, and you can get more tomatoes than if you had to wait all the way until they got red. So the plant can produce them more.
Right, that is another idea, good point, which is that if you pluck these, like this is a good sized tomato, by plucking this off of the vine, now the tomato plant no longer has to spend any of its energy making this tomato, and it can spend its energy making more tomatoes, so that in a few weeks we'll have even more. Okay, thanks. Bye.